Hope everyone had a good lunch. I think we did here. I don't know about the guys at home. But so we're gonna do some project updates, receivers in the water, new tags in the water, things like that. So at the end of this session, we'll open it up to everyone in the room and see if anyone has anything they'd like to add. But first up is gonna be Henry Leggett, and he is here at CERC talking about some of his AOA work.
There we go. Yeah, so now you should be able to click.
Okay, yeah. So again, my name is Henry Leggett. I'm a postdoc in Matt Ogburn's lab here at CERC, and just going to give a brief overview of the receiver array that we maintain and a short update on our project tracking river herring. So the CERC Fishery Conservation Lab, we maintain or currently have receivers in several rivers here in the Chesapeake Bay. We have 7 in the Choptank, 10 here in the Road River, here at CERC, 8 in the Patuxent, 1 in the Potomac, and then our future, we're planning to expand this array by adding about 7 to 10 more this spring in the Rappahannock River in Virginia. One of our tracking projects right now is focused on alewife, which is a river herring. If you're unfamiliar with this fish, they are anadromous, meaning they spend their adult lives in the ocean and migrate into freshwater systems like rivers in the Chesapeake Bay to spawn. We care about them because we estimate that their current abundance is about 2% from their historic peaks. So we're trying to restore this species in the Chesapeake Bay. And to do that, we are conducting biotelemetry projects to try to understand the freshwater habitats they're using to spawn and where they go the rest of their lives out in the ocean. We started this project last year in spring of 2022. During their migration, we tagged 50 fish in the Choptank River using V7s. And probably the most striking result from this project so far is that in August of last year, we detected one of our fish on a receiver just off of Bar Harbor in Maine. It's where Acadia National Park is. So just below the border of Maine and Canada. And from the mouth of the Choptank River, that's about an 800-mile one-way trip. And for us, this is a really big deal. They are, I guess some fish in the population are migrating much further north than we originally thought. And it's got really important management implications because many institutions are putting a lot of time, effort, and money into restoring alewife in the Chesapeake Bay. If our fish are spending their summers and falls up in the Gulf of Maine, getting captured as bycatch in the Atlantic herring fishery, that's something we need to be thinking about. Our next steps this year are to track those fish as they return to the bay, the Choptank River, and then we will be expanding our alewife project into the Rappahannock River. This is a project being conducted in collaboration with the Rappahannock Indian tribe. So this spring, we will be tagging 100 fish in the lower Rappahannock and putting about 7 to 10 receivers down in the lower Rappahannock and kind of select tributaries like Cat Point Creek and Occupation Creek. I also want to briefly mention another extension to this project. We're planning to pair the kind of biotelemetry side, tracking individual fish, with an ecoacoustic experiment. We're doing this using equipment or technology called Hydromoth, which is pictured there on the left. It's essentially like it's the size of a pack of playing cards. It's a recorder that goes underwater and it passively collects the natural acoustic sounds that these fish produce when they spawn. So in addition to looking at movements of individuals in different freshwater habitats, we are then going to be pairing that with indexes of their spawning activity. Yep, it's an update.
Thanks, Henry. And maybe we'll kind of go through all the talks, and then if people have questions, we can get up. You can catch up with Henry during the next break, or maybe if there's time at the end, we'll ask questions then. So next up, we have Ashley Horn from Maryland Department of Natural Resources.
Should be able to use the arrow keys.
All right. Hi, so I'm Ashley Horn with the Department of Natural Resources. We do our project on Atlantic sturgeon in the Nanticoke River. So I'm going to kind of go over the receivers that we do, or a little bit about a background. Right now, we're working on a new grant that we just got this past year. It's going to take us 2022 through 2025, and it's on the molecular assessment of stressed Atlantic sturgeon in nursery habitat. We got this grant through NOAA, and we work with numerous partners, Department of Natural Resources, DNREC, UMCES, UD, Delaware State, North Carolina. There's a whole bunch of partners that are in this. This is a really big project that we're working on right now. And this is actually our 4th grant that we've received through NOAA to work with Atlantic sturgeon in the Nanticoke estuary. So these are our current receivers that we have out right now. You can see the majority of the receivers that we have are in Marshy Hope Creek. There's approximately 30, and then there's a bunch more here in the Nanticoke River. We also maintain a small array down in the Pocomoke River, which is really interesting because even though we don't sample down there, occasionally we have sturgeon show up there. And sometimes there are sturgeon that went there and spend the entire season there. Sometimes they're from another river and they go there and spend their entire season there. So it's really interesting to see that kind of straying with those receivers. And then also, as we heard earlier, we maintain this Chesapeake Bay backbone receiver array up here at the Bay Bridge. So these are, we currently have 37, or we have tagged 37 Atlantic sturgeon. This is kind of a little bit of a busy graph, but it kind of shows you the type of information that we've received through the ACT network. We can see like if our fish aren't coming back to our array every year, it gives us insight that they're going somewhere else, and we can see that they're still alive because they were detected. We're getting fish all the way from Georgia to Connecticut, which is really cool. And I highlighted in yellow, you can see that we have several males that are returning to our river every year, which we think is really cool. One of them, particularly this guy up here, we catch him every year in our net. So it's really fun to get to see him every year, measure him, see how he's doing. With these 37 receiver or transmitters that we have out, we actually have some that are getting ready to expire. So these are 10-year transmitters. They will expire starting next year. So that's an interesting dynamic that we had that we're going through. We're like, oh, now what do we do? Some of our transmitters are starting to die. So we have all these. Oh, and we have also note our females here. The females go a lot cooler places than our males do. Our males tend to like hang around the Chesapeake Bay and go south, South Carolina, but our females will go to like Connecticut, spend a lot of time in the Delaware Bay, New York. So it's really interesting to see the differences in how the males and the females move around. That's about it.
Thanks, Ashley. All right, and next up is Rob Burden. He's from U.S. Fish and Wildlife, doing some work in the Susquehanna.
Afternoon, everybody. Again, my name is Rob Bourdon with the Fish and Wildlife Service. I'm going to give you all an update about some of the work we've been doing in the Susquehanna River, evaluating the downstream migration of American eel. This is the first time we've presented this project to the group, so just try to quickly go through some background about why we're doing this work. So eels, I think a lot of us here are probably familiar with them. If not, they're a catadromous species, so they spend most of their life in a freshwater environment. They migrate out to the Sargasso Sea to spawn. Oceanic currents bring them back on shore. By the time they reach the Susquehanna River, they're thought to be about 2 years old. They'll spend at least 5 years in the river maturing. Others stay much longer before they head back to the ocean. Susquehanna itself, 4 major hydropower dams were constructed in the early 1900s. When Conowingo was constructed in 1928, that precluded access to the bulk of the watershed. Only the lowermost 10 miles of the river were then accessible to migratory fish. Stocking programs for eels were set up pretty quickly after that and ran until about 1980. But then those eels aged out, migrated out, and there were no eels left in the system by the early 2000s. So the Fish and Wildlife Service reinitiated the stocking program in 2008, and we've stocked about 2.2 million eels in upper portions of the watershed since then. So this is an ideal time for us to be studying their outmigration now that we have a lot of eels leaving the system. The goals of our work are to determine the seasonal timing of silver eel migration, determine which environmental variables are associated with this migration. So we're looking at river flow, water temperature, potentially turbidity, lunar phase as potential explanatory variables associated with migration, determine the rate of migration. So how long is it taking them to get from upper portions out into the Chesapeake Bay? Are they being delayed at a particular dam that would interfere with their ability to escape to the Sargasso Sea and contribute to the population? Also looking to determine the total yearly duration of migration. So we know that the fall is the primary migratory period, but we've also seen migration in other months of the year. And finally, we're looking to determine cumulative survival of eels leaving the Susquehanna River. We're also going to combine that with some site-specific studies where they're doing discrete turbine survival, manually putting eel through a hydropower turbine and seeing how well they survive. Also some radio telemetry work at the individual dams. So we capture eels with boat and backpack electrofishing. We use NovaSea V13 tags, random ping rate between 33 and 57 seconds. Pretty good battery life of 726 days. So we should get 2 years where the fish are available for us to detect. In 2021, that was our pilot project. We only tagged about 16 fish, but this past summer, we really ramped up our effort. We tagged 101 eels, and this coming summer, we'll tag another 100. These are acoustic receiver arrays. We have 9 total from Harrisburg down to Havre de Grace. The Fish and Wildlife Service maintains 4 of them. The other 5 are maintained by the hydropower agencies. The Fish and Wildlife Service arrays will be in the river year-round. The hydropower companies may be removing theirs seasonally due to potential for icing and interference with the receivers. Just some brief results from this most recent migratory season. This table represents each of our arrays organized from most upstream to downstream and how many eels were detected at each of these arrays. The download dates are pretty variable, so this is not a complete picture of what we saw yet. Particularly the arrays that are bolded and italicized here were downloaded before a big migratory event in mid-November when most eels left the system. But from this, we know that 48 eels minimum initiated migration this year, and then a minimum of 19 were detected downstream of the lowermost barrier, and then will be available for detection at some of the other arrays from our collaborators. And from our pilot project, this is just some of the detections we got back from participation in the ACT network. So we definitely got a lot of detections from the Chesapeake Bay Bridge, but also from some other locations in the bay and all the way down to the mouth of the bay. So looking forward to this next data upload where we have a lot more fish to be detected from these partner arrays. So there's a lot of people who contribute to this project, but mostly I just want to thank everybody in this network. It's a pretty novel opportunity to be able to track eels once they leave a riverine system. So excited to see what information we get back this year.
All right, now we are flipping over to the virtual land. And first up is going to be Tim Rao at NOAA, Northeast Fisheries Science Center.
All right,
All right.
looks good, Tim.
Does it? All right.
Yep, and we can hear you, so you're good to go.
All right. Great. Yeah, thanks for inviting me to present kind of an update on the work we do at the Northeast Fisheries Science Center up in Woods Hole. I'm a researcher within the Passive Acoustic Group, within the Protected Species branch. And as a member of the Passive Acoustic Group, let's see if I can advance. There we go. We're mostly interested in underwater sound and marine environments. So a lot of our field work revolves around recording sounds from marine mammals, sounds produced by fish, anthropogenic activity, and then, you know, weather events and all sorts of geological activity that can generate sound in the marine environment. And to do this, we use a variety of technologies, from ship-based activities where we tow hydrophones that record sound, and you can localize animals such as marine mammals, some fixed moorings and gliders, some mobile gear, and every once in a while we get to tag fish, which is fun. We have a project that tags Atlantic cod in the wind energy development area, and I think Ali Frey presented some of those results either last year or the year before. Okay. The thing about why I'm here today is because a lot of our moorings are deep or are deep enough that we actually have to use an acoustic release. We also have gliders that we put telemetry receivers on. And then, like I mentioned, we do have some fish tagged. So since most of our moorings are deep, we've gone with the Innovasi Vemco VR2AR model. And so there's a little schematic of kind of our bread and butter mooring design on the left here, subsurface float, so it doesn't have too much interaction with fishing gear or getting pulled by boaters. We also have an FPOD, which is a click detector for odontocetes, such as harbor porpoise and pilot whales and anything else that produces echolocation clicks. And then the sound trap is the model of the instrument we use to record underwater sound. And then, yep, every mooring has the acoustic release. We have a couple other mooring designs with retrievable anchor systems. And then every once in a while, we partner with researchers at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution to deploy gliders, which have a DEMON, which records sound. It's kind of like sound trap. And then we strap a VR2W to the forward portion of that to get detections. So I am actually interested in what Aaron was sharing about something that might be better than a VR2W. So I'll follow up with him on that. And we're currently expanding our moorings every single year. So this is kind of a map of all the moorings we currently have in the water. The green is Gulf of Maine, kind of inshore. And then the orange are kind of our home-based moorings. A lot of them are lined up with wind energy areas south of Cape Cod. But also we've branched out to the northwest of Georges Bank, and that's for a lot of right whale research. So a lot of our research is for wind energy and right whales. And then part of that, we've gone into the mid-Atlantic. So there's currently six sites deployed down there. We retrieve these generally every 5 months. So we get telemetry data every 5 months downloaded. And then I just threw up the map of what's public on the ACT-Matos webpage. And it's kind of rewarding to see how some of our work fills in some of the gaps, at least for public data sets. And then just looking at kind of where we overlap with other people's efforts, it helps us plan where we put things. Looking for current opportunities. So this map has a few other researchers, some moorings from UNH, and also Maine Department of Marine Resources. Those being the purple and blue. I believe the main ones have telemetry receivers on them, and it looks like those are being uploaded. But I just wanted to point this out that there are opportunities to reach out to people that are doing passive acoustics to see if you can maybe get receivers put on their moorings. And then this grid here is kind of our long-term plan where we think that we should have moorings. So each one of these blue grids is where we think we should have a mooring. So that would be, again, additional telemetry data. And then the teal ones are higher resolution grids around the wind energy areas off the East Coast. So these are some of the grids that we'll be likely filling in the near future. In terms of this year, we're really expanding in southern New England as they start building the wind energy areas up. So we can expect to have some more sites there. And some of the sites that you see on these maps, we just put in this year. So expect more data getting uploaded by us in the near future. And then I just pulled from the OTN website, I believe, kind of which projects we provided sections to, and so here's a list. And yeah, we're fully committed to uploading more data when we get them in a timely manner. And I always promise to get the glider data in the system, and yeah, that'll be something that'll get added very shortly. So thanks, and hopefully the data have been useful.
Thanks, Tim. We forgot we were muted on our end. I forgot. All right, next up, we're gonna have Brian Nealon from New Jersey Department.
Alrighty, I'm just going to share my screen. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, are you seeing my slideshow view or presenter view?
Slideshow, it looks good on our end and we can hear you.
Alrighty. So I'll get started here. Everybody, my name is Brian Nealon. I'm a biologist with the Bureau of Marine Fisheries in New Jersey. I took over operating the acoustic receiver array in Lower Delaware Bay from Brendan Harrison last year. This array has been running, this will be our 12th year, so coming up, so I think you guys haven't gotten an update in a while, so I figured I'd touch on some updates and history of the project sort of thing. So just some quick background and history on the project for those who aren't familiar with it. The New Jersey Marine Fisheries Administration deploys an array of 19 VEMCO receivers in the eastern lower half of Delaware Bay. It was first deployed in 2012, and there was a kind of a joint effort with Delaware folks. There was a complementary array in the western half of the bay. The receiver locations, which you can see on the map on the right there, were selected to maximize spatial coverage while avoiding historic fisheries, so the crab dredge fisheries and the oyster fisheries in the bay there. Tried to minimize interactions since we're putting these out with anchors in the bay and leaving them there. It was originally funded through a NOAA NIMS grant and was implemented to better understand the spatial and temporal use of Delaware estuary by Atlantic sturgeon. The survey was developed in response to the listing of Atlantic sturgeon on the endangered species list, and we were just trying to, it was implemented to help fill knowledge and data gaps on the spatial and temporal use of Delaware estuary by Atlantic sturgeon. So here I've just highlighted some survey details. So the array is deployed in the lower Delaware Bay from mid-March through mid-November, and the data is downloaded monthly. We haul them out of the bay in the winter to prevent loss due to ice conditions and just a general lack of tag detections during the winter months. An average year, we'll see about 90,000 detections per year. Lower years, 40,000, sometimes over 100,000 detections, depending on how long the fish we're hearing are hanging out in the bay. And usually average about 300 individual tags per year. So not surprisingly, Atlantic sturgeon make up the bulk of the species detected. In a given year, they usually make up about 60% of our known tags. The rest of the tags are primarily from sand tiger sharks, sandbar sharks, which use the Delaware Bay as pupping and feeding grounds, and then striped bass kind of rounds out the rest of the detections, which obviously transit through the bay, their spawning grounds in the spring. So just some recent highlights. We just recently received a new funding grant from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service after our NOAA NIMS grant ended. This grant will keep the project going through 2024. We've seen an uptick in fish species detections typically associated with the South Atlantic. Bull sharks, black tips. We've seen tarpon and cobia lately as well. This is something I think a lot of us here in the Mid-Atlantic and New England have been seeing as species ranges and population centers shift northwards with warming water temps. And finally, just this year, we had a receiver that was at large for just over 6 years. Was found washed up on a Cape May beach after bouncing around Delaware Bay for a little over 6 years. It had approximately 2.5 years worth of data on it, so the battery kept going for quite a while. I put a new fresh battery in it, and it fired right up. And I think once we get a firmware update on it, it should be good to be deployed next year. So I thought that was pretty cool. And this is my last slide. Just want to go over an upcoming telemetry project that New Jersey is working with Monmouth University. So New Jersey's Division of Science and Research is collaborating with Professor Keith Dutton from Monmouth University on a receiver project associated with wind energy development. They'll be deploying arrays of receivers within the lease areas, as well as bracketing either sides of the cables coming from the leased areas and the landfalls. This was to get a better understanding of the effects of wind energy development on fisheries and protected species. The project is being funded through mitigation money funds that the lessees are required to provide as part of their wind energy projects. And I believe the idea here is to have them out pre-construction, during construction, and post-construction to give us a kind of a holistic view of the effects of all this wind energy development that's going on, especially here in the Mid-Atlantic Bight. And so they're not out yet. They're still, I believe the funding was secured. So they're past the planning stage. The funding was secured. I think they're getting all their final ducks in a row, and this should be going out in the next year or two. So I think it's pretty exciting, and I know there's a lot of wind energy development going on the Atlantic coast here. So hopefully we'll get some good data out of this project. And that's all I had.
Thanks, Brian. All right, next up on the schedule is Margaret Whitmore from Virginia.
Right. Hi, everyone. I don't have slides for you guys today, but I just wanted to give a quick update on the Virginia Department of Wildlife Resources catfish movement project that we have going on in the James River. So this past year was our first full year of data collection. We have 50 blue catfish tagged in the James River, ranging from 1/2 pound to about 52 pounds. We tagged our first cohort of 40 in fall of 2021, and we had intended to tag our second cohort this past fall, but the hurricane that came through kind of dropped the temperature really quickly and made the low frequency electrofishing gear that we use ineffective. So we're looking to tag some more 30 additional fish this spring once the water temperature warms up a little bit. So we've kind of teamed up with VCU. They manage the passive array in the James River. So we kind of coordinate with them on data. And then DWR has launched an additional 12 receivers in tributaries to the James River. So the two major ones are the Appomattox and the Chickahominy River. And then we have 4 other tributaries that are much smaller, but typically see really high densities of blue catfish. So fish were tagged in a few different locations, 5 different locations, and we were looking to target areas within the commercial low frequency electrofishing zone and outside, as well as in tributaries. Kind of the main goals that we're hoping to get out of this project, the main answers we're kind of looking for is first, just to get baseline movement within the system and look at what environmental drivers are kind of motivating them to move. And we also want to look at movements into and out of the commercial zone, and if that's different based on if they're in tributaries above the commercial zone, below. And we also have an active tracking component to that project. So that's really what we focused on this past summer. We did active tracking along the low frequency electrofishing license holder. And between that and the passive array, we kind of get this coarse and fine scale look at how the low frequency and the commercial fishing is impacting movement of these fish. And that has actually also kind of inspired a side project that looks at how the low frequency is impacting other native species, for example, sturgeon. And then we've also used active tracking the first year to try to identify spawning locations and then winter and summer aggregation sites. And so, you know, this is recreationally a really important fish. It's also an invasive fish, and it's also commercially important both for, you know, traditional gears like hoop netting and, you know, newer gears like the low frequency. So a big part of this project is, you know, looking forward to engage with the fishing community more, being able to provide information to our recreational anglers to encourage targeting of the species, as well as, you know, helping the commercial watermen increase their operational efficiency, all with the goal of informing management and, you know, trying to get the densities of these fish down in these systems. So that's what I have, and take any questions, I guess, if anyone has some.
Thanks, Margie. All right, we are now going to turn it over to Mike O'Brien, who has, I think, some analysis packages he's working on, if I read his email correctly.
Yeah, hey, so I don't have a presentation, but I'll click through a couple things quickly. First, I think just as an update of things going out in the water, which is associated with a US wind monitoring project. It's interesting that Tim started talking about putting receivers out as in kind of shipper opportunities of passive acoustic monitoring. It's exactly what we're doing here offshore of Ocean City. It'll be some subset of the sites you see here, but we'll have a nice little, at least gate offshore Maryland again, which we've been missing for the past couple of years, and that should, I think, scheduled to be out for about 8 years. And shifting gears towards my thing, I'm developing or have developed our package to interface with Matos in a programmatic way. So this isn't meant to replace something like GLaTOS that people have been using to help analyze their data. This is specifically getting and sending data to the Matos website in a way that you can just script out. So this is pretty useful for me when I'm managing 6, 7, 8 projects that are up there, to be able to kind of just script it out and not have to go through individually and download the data that has been uploaded and vice versa. And the one thing that I'm moving on into is a push summary. I think Joy had mentioned that they're moving to a GeoServer. And one of the powerful things with that is that here I was able to kind of pull all the data off of the OTN GeoServer when we had matches and create automatic tables and summaries of what was actually heard. So this is a push summary from Joey Afraides' currently listening project in the Kennebec River of sturgeons. There's an array out there. You go and you get matches, and you can kind of automatically download your data, ping the OTN servers to get the metadata of the projects themselves. So you can get an idea of whose fish you've heard, what the project was, their code, detection of the individuals, so kind of overall. This comes from the OTN GeoServer as well, where it tells you just what is the geographic extent of those projects. You saw a little bit of this in Caitlin's presentation. A general summary by the receivers you have out, a flat map here, which will be transitioning over to a leaflet interactive map, so you could zoom in and take a look, for instance, at your detections according to NOAA charts in this instance, if they tend to load. Built into all of the work that you put into your receiver metadata, you can pretty quickly get what the temporal receiver coverage of your array is. So that would pop into this as well. And an overall section, which is super useful for me, again, when I'm managing 5, 6, 7 projects on Matos, is what is actually different than the last time that data kind of came out. And it'll spit this kind of out for you. This is an active development. I would really appreciate any input from people. You can email me, it's o'brien@umcs.edu. The development of the package is currently hosted on my GitHub repository. I can kind of put that up there as well. You can file an issue, you can make suggestions, you can email me, you can do some development yourself. This will probably get done in the next 2 or 3 weeks, because if it doesn't, then it's going to have to wait till November because field season's coming up pretty quickly. So that's my quick update.
Thanks, Mike. So that is kind of the end of scheduled people. Does anybody else have things that they would like to add? Whether you're online or here? Receivers coming in, coming out, tags. We'll start with Tom.
So we have 16,
Oh, yes, come up here.
speed thing on 2 different projects. We have 16 receivers that went into estuaries. So we covered all the estuary inlets between Cape May and Shark River in New Jersey. Those showed up on the first map. And then additionally, we have both Femco and Low-Tech receivers out on Sand Ridge off of Atlantic City to look at use of dredge borrow site. Specific project there, both broad scale and short scale. So those are still in the water, but they're coming out in February. The dredge ones are.
Cool, thank you. Well.
Hello, everyone. First, thanks to Matt and Kim for hosting this. It's nice to be back again. It's been a while since I've seen you guys. So in Massachusetts, we have a lot going on, maybe not quite as much as we've had in past years. So as most of you may know, I work with a team, Ben Gehagen, Micah Dean, and then at a lesser degree, Greg Skolmel, and cumulatively plus a couple of little side projects. We do a lot of different research. Greg Skolmel's array is out, and he's going to be continuing doing the tagging, and I've been helping him maintain his receivers. As for Micah Dean and Ben Gehagen and I, this year we're going to do a little bit less striped bass tagging that we've done in the past. That might be a relief to some of you guys, but we in the past, starting 2020, 2021, we were doing a post-release mortality study looking at striped bass caught with circle hooks and J hooks. We were very successful in being able to predict mortality based on hook location, temperature, and fight time. And so now we can actually assign condition scores to a fish by just visually inspecting this fish. So rather than this year catching more fish and tagging them, we're actually going to be initiating a 2-year study where we're going to be assessing use and mortality associated with artificial lures. So no tagging, but we're going to be doing a lot of bass fishing, which will be good. And we're going to be starting to really put that out there. Some of you guys might see some of this stuff. We're going to be asking primarily off of Massachusetts, but not specifically so. We're going to be asking for anglers to help. So it's going to be a citizen science effort. And then we're going to do a bunch of our own trips, and we're going to work with the charter industry. And so really try to bump up these numbers. Aside of that, though, we're still going to be maintaining our array. We have over 50 receivers in Boston Harbor estuary. We're going to be potentially tagging again, but we have tags right now. We have over almost 100 tags in winter flounder. We're specifically looking for timing and location of spawning. We're starting to see that what is traditionally in the literature may not necessarily jive with what we're seeing in these estuaries. So that's going to be, along with other things that we're doing to answer that question, we are going to be maintaining that 50 receiver array, plus all the gates that we maintain off the tip of Cape Ann, which is northern Massachusetts, off the back of the Cape and the Cape Cod Canal. And so cumulatively, I think between Greg Skolmel and myself, we have well over 100 receivers in Massachusetts. So expect to have all those, your detection data. We're up to date now, working with Elise Koob, works with me, working with Camelot. We are right on top of getting the detection information into the Matos database and back turned around to you guys. And then on a side, we're working now collaboratively with Connecticut Department of Energy Environmental Protection, Connecticut DEEP. They have a unique opportunity for us to apply what we've done with our striped bass post-release mortality in a winter holdover fishery. So they have a river, the Housatonic River, which has actually a surprisingly a pretty robust striped bass fishery. There's a lot of recreational anglers fishing there. And it's like a closed system. So we can actually cover the entire river with about 26 receivers. We're tagging over 150 fish, working closely with Connecticut DEEP. And then, so the question is going to be post-release mortality using the artificial lure style that they're using, but also it's during really, well, although this winter has been pretty mild, under, lesser than normal, I guess, water temperatures. So yeah, so that's what we got going on, and we'll get your detectors out to you as soon as we haul our receivers. Thanks.
Anyone else in the room? Oh, I'm the taker.
Hi everyone, I'm Ben, working in University of Delaware. I study coastal shark species, and I'm interested also in shoal and dredge shoal area. We work in Sandbridge Shoal, where we have 15 receivers, 14 now, because I lost one this weekend, and 14 receivers in Sandbridge Shoal. And we do acoustic telemetry, and we're also interested in trophic ecology, so we do stable isotopes. We use Baited remote underwater video systems, accelerometers, and a whole bunch of stuff. So if I can be helpful for anyone, please find me. And I'm hoping to deploy receivers in Delaware off the Delaware Bay, but this is to be determined. So we'll see, maybe next year, hopefully. And we don't have many tags out, so probably don't hear our fish. We only have 3 tags out, but we're probably hearing your fish. So happy to collaborate.
Is there if there's anyone online that would like to share some updates, feel free to unmute yourself or ask Emily to give you permission to do so. We can take a couple more if there's any.